Well, hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is definitely a much more intimate crowd than what we're used to, but in any event, we're happy to have all of you here. I hope everybody had a great, enjoyable spring break. It was nice, it was long, and it was so needed, and now we're back and ready to push forward for the next hump. But in any event, again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. We're excited to introduce you to Dr. Kerr Ramsey, who is going to speak to us about really just navigating life and parenting and students developing, their own autonomy in their whole educational life process. And so I'm not going to do a lot of talking tonight. This is not my night. We're going to introduce Dr. Kerr Ramsey. He'll tell a little bit more about himself, and then he'll present to you guys.
All right, thank you. This brings back memories of my time as a youth minister and no one sitting up front. This is really nice. Thanks for making me feel comfortable here. I really appreciate that. It is a true joy to be with you. You may hear a couple y'alls sneak out of me from time to time. I am not from Long Island. I come to you genuinely from North Carolina, but it's really, really fun to be up here. It's great to see some High Point parents in the room and others who I know a little bit about High Point University. For those of you who don't, we can have a chance to talk about that at the end. But tonight is not intended to be just a pitch for High Point University. This is not even what is the secret to get into college. If that's what you're hoping for your 9th and 10th graders, I will disappoint you greatly. Because I think this is about something much bigger than that. This is about helping your students prepare for the college search process, prepare for success throughout the rest of their time here in high school, prepare for success in college, and most importantly, set them up for success in life. Because ultimately, right, that's what we really want. That's why you're worried about where they're going to college. That's why you're worried about the courses they're going to take next year. Because as parents, you want deeply for your students to find success, to find happiness, to find a path to the future. And that is what I care about. I can't say that I am perfect in this. My children will tell you I fail regularly. But that's part of the journey, right? Is failing and learning from it and finding out what we can do together to support our students in this. The session tonight focuses on what we at High Point University call life skills. We are known as the premier life skills university, and that's because we make sure that our education goes beyond the classroom, beyond what people generally think of as traditional higher education. It goes beyond what you typically think of as part of an educational experience. Sometimes people think about these skills as something that just happens magically, but we don't think hope is a strategy at High Point. And I hope that you don't with your own students, right? We want to be intentional about the way in which we parent. We want to be intentional about the way in which we educate. We want to be intentional about helping young adults prepare for a life that goes to the future. Now, when we think about life skills, there is one advantage that all of your students, we all kind of give them credit for. And I've got a quick video to talk about this.
At Ally Bank, no branches equals great rates. It's a fact. Kind of like grandkids equals free tech support.
Oh, Liz, oh, look at you. So great to see you. None of this works. Come on in.
I just love silly things like that. Right, but your students, we give them advantage. They are the tech natives. From day one, they have had an iPad, an iPhone, some sort of tablet in their hands at all times. They can do that. We're not going to talk tonight about how to use technology. I'm not going to talk tonight about ChatGPT or GPT-4. I'm not going to talk about the way in which artificial intelligence can influence their lives. And it certainly will. And between now and when they graduate high school, technology will continue to advance and they'll have different ways of using it. I'm talking about tonight about skills that are going to prepare them for whatever comes their way. And this is so important. This is important because, well, when you look at statistics, 46% of adults under the age of 29 report living with their parents. I don't know about you all. I'm sure you love your children, but I'm sure eventually you also want them to move out. Yeah, and when they go to college, you probably don't want them to come back home except for holidays. You have plans for them to go off and do something else. And you'd like to think that's normal, but it's not. And why is it not normal? Because only 52% of college graduates are employed within 6 months of graduation. College is not a guarantee that there's something on the other side. And yes, there is a national narrative right now about the challenges in higher education, right? It's too expensive, it doesn't work, it's not valuable. And I have to admit, there's something to that, right? If only about half of college graduates are finding employment. And this isn't because of 2020, this isn't because of the recession, this is something we've seen over the last few years, and this number actually continues to decline. So what can we do about this, and why is this happening? Well, often we tell students, right, how do you avoid this? How do you stand out? Be unique, right? Be someone different. You've probably heard that. Someone's probably given you that advice during your life, and some of you may have told your students if they're worried about this opportunity or that opportunity, just be different, be unique. And there's a piece to it, right? It's important to be different in your lives. But I want to show you the story of this guy. This is the last honey hunter of Nepal. Every year in the spring, he knits together this rope ladder. He throws it over the side of this mountain. He climbs down and harvests honey. You can see this right here, honey hive, from the world's largest bees. He gets stung hundreds and hundreds of times while he does this, but he makes a living, and he's able to support himself doing this. He is the only person in the world that does this. He is incredibly unique. Who wants his job? Okay, 2 of you. I am very worried about you. Extremely concerned. We have the counseling staff here, and at the end of this, we'll have a conversation. Right? He's unique, but that's not what it takes. It takes more than being unique. It also takes being relevant. Being someone who has the skills, who has the abilities that other people need and want, so you can contribute in a greater way to society. When we look at what makes new hires successful, people think it often has to do with what you know, right? How well educated are you? How suited are you for the role? But when you look at the research around this, very rarely is the reason why someone is not successful in their work have anything to do with their technical ability. In fact, technical competence only accounts for 11% of the reasons why people are not successful in their first jobs or in their jobs as a whole. And if you think about it, that makes sense, right? Because to get the job, you have to show you know what you're doing. You have to show that you can do the work. Okay, so if that's the baseline, what actually separates people from others? What helps people be successful? Temperament is a huge part of this, right? 15% of the reason why. Their motivation or lack thereof. And I'm already starting to see a couple of you nod who may be hiring recent college graduates or working with folks that don't have these skills. Emotional intelligence, right? The ability to relate to other people. And the number one reason new hires are not successful, anyone want to guess? Well, I think that goes down with technical competence. Not smart. Yeah, these are my honey hunters here. Both these guys like to raise their hand. Yes. Depression. No, it's not a mental health. It's their lack of coachability, right? Their lack of willingness to listen to those around them. And this is something we see in a growing number with the generation that's graduating from college right now. There's a great time to be independent, and that's good. It's good to want to show that you know what you're doing. But the number one reason people are losing their jobs is their lack of coachability. And this is scary. Only 46% of new hires fail in their first jobs within 18 months. Half of people are failing in their jobs in the first year and a half. That's not a sustainable number. And so how can you help your students now develop the skills that they need, these, temperament, motivation, emotional intelligence, and coachability, so they're successful? This study is about work, but we know that this is also what helps students in education, in high school and in college, to be successful. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through each of these factors so you can think about ways in which you can help your students develop these right now. Now, the reason we have to talk about this is because when you ask recent college graduates how well they do in each of these skills, well, guess what? They are all above average in all of these. Oh yeah, 66% think they're coachable. Good for them. When you ask their employers, there's a pretty significant gap. So we may also have a confidence problem or an overconfidence problem with young adults these days, but there's also an issue with each of these areas. Even the technical competence piece, their employers don't necessarily think they're as good as they can be at it. And for students, I do feel your pain. There are a couple of students here, not all your parents. This is a great quote of what you might experience all the time. I see no hope for the future. Youth are frivolous, reckless. When I was young, right, we had it all together. Who wants to take a guess on when this was said? Come on, where are my guys? You're volunteering for everything. There you Oh, so you think recently, within the last couple of years, this was said? Who else wants to take a guess on when this was said? Brave audience. You're going to take another guess. 2020? That is not right, but it's a good guess. I appreciate that. What? 1970, okay? That's a good guess. We'll take one more. 1920, we're going back in time. We're moving in the right direction. We haven't yet moved far enough. This was Hesiod in 700 BCE. Right? So there is, right, I have to acknowledge some generational differences here. Right? Adults always think kids don't have it. And adults always think when we were kids, when we first got out of college, wow, we were so much better. We were so much more respectful. I think they call this revisionist history. We forget what life was really like. But here's the other side of it. Students, it doesn't matter if it's real or not. This is the impression that you're going out into the world against. The people who are hiring you are expecting you to be reckless and frivolous, expecting you to not be coachable, expecting you to not be able to do these things. So if you can show them quickly and easily that you have these skills and abilities that they don't expect you to have, you quickly stand out among your peers. And they don't expect you to have these, so they're hiring you whether or not they think you do. And in that first job, in your time in graduate school, when you're in law school, right, having a chance to join the law review, showing quickly that you have these skills makes it clear that you are different than all the rest. Okay, so we'll jump right in, and we'll begin with coachability. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. Coachability, the most important thing here is believing that you can change. Because if you don't believe that you can change, if you don't believe that you can improve, if you don't believe that effort that goes into something can create a stronger result, right, you'll never listen to anyone trying to help you out along the way. If you think you have it all figured out, if you think you're already perfect at the moment, you're never going to be coachable, right? So you have to first believe that there's opportunity for growth. And you have to believe that effort, right, makes you stronger. Solutions are there. So once you believe that this is possible, the next piece is understanding why this is important and why this ultimately matters. How many of you are familiar with the 10,000 hour rule? Does this ring a bell for anybody? A few. Yeah, good. Malcolm Gladwell made this really famous a few years ago. This comes out of the work of Anders Ericsson. Ericsson is a psychologist, was a psychologist at Florida State. He passed away a couple years ago. Wrote a book called Peak, and he was looking at what makes an expert. And what became famous was 10,000 hours. Idea is 10,000 hours of practice makes you an expert. Well, okay, that's good, but it actually misses a huge part of the point, because it wasn't just 10,000 hours of practice. It was 10,000 hours of what he called intentional practice. And intentional practice involves two key points. The first is self-reflection, an understanding of what you're doing, being able to take a step back and think about it. We're in a theater, right? So this takes students who are performing on stage, who are playing musical instruments. To get better, you have to be able to self-analyze what you've done. But then you also have to be willing to accept coaching, because you've got to find an expert who knows more than you. This is the heart of education, right? What do we call experts in education? We call them teachers. We call them professors. And the students who learn the best are the ones who are willing to say, okay, I can do this better, and then seek out someone who can help them doing it. Help them learn that skill, help them learn that piece. And this is true of everything we're doing. This is true of work, this is true of life, this is true of sports. Being able to take a step back and look and say, where did I fall short? Where do I have opportunities? And who can I go to who can help me do that? So expert coaching really matters. The other reason this is important comes down to mentorship. Right? And we think about mentorship. This is great. It's a term we like to throw around a lot. Mentorship matters. What is a mentor? A mentor is someone who supports you along the way, who encourages you to do maybe more than you could, that you think you can, who picks you up, right, if you go a step too far along the way. And we want to believe that mentorship matters. Some of us want to believe that our mentorship really matters to the people around us, whether it's our kids or someone that we work with. But this is critical for your students, helping them see this. And I see mentorship and coaching as being really closely aligned here. And the reason this matters is because mentorship in college was the #1 predictor of success after college, according to the Gallup organization. They did a survey of recent college graduates, talking with them about the experiences they had in college, and then looking at who succeeded afterwards and who didn't. Those who identified a mentor while they were in college were more successful than those that did not. It was so important, it was actually twice as meaningful as any other factor in the survey. Now here's the scary part. Only 16% of people in that survey felt that they had a mentor in college, felt that they had an adult who cared about them during their college experience. And I think there are lots of people at fault here. There's a problem with higher education right now where we're focused on how cheaply, how quickly I can get through this. Let's just check a box and move on. Let me get the piece of paper, move on to the next step because I'm preparing for graduate school, because I just want to get the job, because of something else, right? The experience for many people has been pushed down in favor of just completing the outcome. But the other thing is, students these days don't seek out professors in the way they used to. You don't seek out coaching. You aren't seeking out the advice and input from adults. And being willing to do that, being willing to step up and say, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. I really admire you. Can you help me with this question? Can you help me learn more deeply in this area? Can you help advise my club or organization? Finding those mentors are setting students up for success, and it's setting them up in a way that will prepare them for the rest of their life if they learn this habit of finding people who know more than they do, seeking out their advice and wisdom, and letting it propel them through life. Moving on from coachability, the next piece was emotional intelligence. And this is a place where I think the world right now has a gap, not just young adults, right? I see some nods and uncomfortable smiles. One of the things that is critical to remember here is that it's just okay to be kind. It's okay to be a good person. And when you look at the research that comes out of this, kindness is one of the most important factors in determining long-term personal and professional success. Adam Grant, who's a psychologist at the Wharton School of Business, has done some incredible research on this. His book, Give and Take, looks at success long-term, puts people in groups of givers, takers, and matchers, and looks at how they do throughout their careers. Matchers, right? You know these people. I give you an opportunity, you owe me something. You borrowed $5, you owe me $5, right? And those folks are fine. They generally aren't the most exciting people to be around, but they don't cause any trouble. It's easy, do okay, and they do fine throughout their careers. Takers are people who we often think of, they get the movies written about them, right? They're hard-charging, take no prisoners, stepping over everybody as they go along the way. But usually the movie is written because ultimately they burn every bridge they have and there's some really dramatic collapse in the end. So quick short-term success, limited long-term success because they run out of people willing to support them. The folks who have the longest success are the givers who are willing to help others along the way. And there's a caveat here, though. The most important thing to remember, givers were either the most successful or the least successful. And the difference between givers who were successful and those who weren't was their willingness to invest in themselves. Right? Givers who gave everything, who didn't make time to continue to develop themselves, who didn't seek out coaching, who didn't seek out mentors, who didn't seek out additional technical abilities, were ultimately passed over because they were giving and weren't able to contribute. Those who did both, who gave freely of their time, who helped people out, when someone asked for a recommendation, they gave it. When you heard from a recruiter, you don't want the job, but I know somebody else that does. When you have an interest from someone in joining a club or organization, no, it's not me, but I've got a great friend who's willing to help out along the way. Those who said yes, but also took time to invest in themselves, are ultimately the most successful. So it's good to give. It's good to be kind. It's good to help out others along the way. It's also important in an era right now where we are skeptical of everything, to be willing to default to truth. This has been part of our development as growth as human beings. There's some fascinating research that has come out of Europe recently looking at human development over time. It also compares us to, it's a funny story about how dogs were domesticated, and we've ultimately chosen a domestication based off of how cute dogs are, not actually how helpful they are. Don't worry, humans haven't developed over time because of our cuteness, but we have developed because of our ability to work together, right? As humans evolved, those who worked together the best, who trusted groups, are the groups that ultimately had success. And this is true, has been true for most of human history. And still, right, if we're being honest, is true. You might not trust the recommendation of the waitress at that restaurant because anytime you ask, she's always saying, do you know what? The most expensive thing on that menu is definitely the best thing we have here. You may not trust the media now. That's up to you. We won't go down that road. But for the most part, we have to remember that when we meet people, we've got to be able to trust them. Because if we're skeptical of everyone we ever meet, we're never going to get anything done. Again, we're going to be totally on an island. We're not going to have a community of people that we can work with. So be willing to default to truth. And careful not to punish people when they make mistakes. Parents, this is a big one. Sometimes your students are not fully honest with you. I know that. Sometimes it's on purpose. That's not okay. Sometimes it's a mistake. That's different. Being able to know the difference and not punish when mistakes are made, but see what we can get out of it is incredibly important. Another piece in this trust factor is our ability to talk to each other face to face. And we've seen over the last few years, certainly, how much of a challenge this can be. We've seen the quality of our conversations change when they're mediated by a screen. We've seen the quality of our experiences change. I don't know about you. Certainly we all feel tired after a day at work, but doing it, looking at a camera, looking at a screen, it's a different feeling at the end of the day. When we have these conversations with our students, when we have these opportunities for coaching and for mentorship, as much as possible, doing it face to face helps encourage feelings of trust, helps encourage a willingness to be honest with people in a way that the screen doesn't allow. So have as many of these conversations as you can with your students face to face. Another way to help build emotional intelligence with your students is to travel. And I know you've just come off of spring break. Some of you had some big trips. Some of you stayed close to home, and that's fine. But why is travel important? Because travel is often a way to be exposed to people who are different than us, who come from a different community, who come from a different place. And one of the greatest things we can do to develop emotional intelligence is being around people who aren't like us. Because being around people who aren't like us helps us realize there's more in the world than just us, more than just our small little circle. And the more we believe that, the more we understand we're part of something much bigger, the more we're going to be able to relate to other people. So I encourage you to do this as much as possible. Your students are excited. There's a benefit to traveling, and they want to be able to do it. There's an even bigger benefit if you incorporate it with opportunities for service and volunteerism. Service and volunteerism really matters. This is the number one reason, according to Vivek Murthy, our current Surgeon General, the number one way to break out of cycles of anxiety and depression, right? A reminder that the world is bigger than the problems that we feel that we have. This is a great way just to connect with other people, to put our problems in perspective, to put our realities in perspective, and to do something different. So yes, I know some of you feel that it's important to collect 4,000 volunteer hours by the time your students graduate high school, because that's going to set them up for success in college. And it will, not because of the number of hours, but because of the opportunity to be around other people, the opportunity to expand their minds, expand their realities, and be exposed to new things. So I strongly encourage this. Another thing I want to encourage is work, having a job. And this used to be something that happened all the time with high school students. As recently as 2000, over 40% of American high school students had a job during the school year. Who wants to guess where that is now? Yes. What, 30? We're getting in the right direction. 10? Well, now you're getting just skeptical. But it's 17. Only 17% of American high school students currently have a job. Why? Well, it's not because they're not available. It's because in many ways I think we've become so focused on what we have to do to prepare for college through this magical list of items we have to check off a box. We've forgotten one of the most important things we can do is teach our students responsibility, teach our students perseverance. Teach our students how to connect with other people, because what are the kinds of jobs that high school students do? They work in restaurants, they work in retail, they're lifeguards. They are jobs where they interact with lots of people. They work construction, right? These are jobs where they interact with people. And the more people your students can talk to, the better prepared they're going to be for life. And talking to strangers. Think about it, when they're in business, what are they going to be doing? They have to be prepared to go and talk to people they don't know. The more they can do it now and get paid for it, the better. And if you're looking for a hook for college, now that only 17% of students work, this is almost as rare as the National Honor Society, having a job. And it's something that's much easier to do. Summer work even, 50% of high school students used to work in the summer. Now, less than 30% do. Again, why? I think it's because we're chasing that perfect summer program. We're chasing the jewel in the crown. And I've got a secret for you. College summer programs are only a benefit to the colleges that are taking your money to be enrolled in those summer programs. They make a ton of money off of them. And for very few students does it affect their opportunity for college at all. At all. What it shows is that your family is willing to pay for it, not that the student has done anything really spectacular. So hear me, if it's great, if you want your student to do it, by all means, go for it. They're going to make some friends there, they're going to have some opportunities, but so will they by going to summer camp, so will they by having jobs. There are lots of things they can do in the summer. As we think about motivation, I want to move forward. Why are we doing these things? How do we go about it? The most important thing to think about with motivation is the type of motivation. Often we think of extrinsic things, and parents, we're guilty here. I've got to get my student to do this. We'll set up the checklist. We'll set up an allowance. If you do this, then that. Those are all types of extrinsic motivation, where it's coming from somewhere else. And extrinsic motivation is only sustainable for so long. And think about it. And if you don't believe me, let's think about youth sports trophies. Okay, parents, think back when you were going through sports, right? You might get a ribbon or maybe a medal if you did something special. Now 7-year-olds are getting trophies that are this tall, and they've got to keep growing every single year. You've experienced this at work. What used to be, thanks so much, a $100 gift card, I really appreciate it. Oh, only a $100 gift card? That doesn't mean anything anymore. Bonuses, they've got to continue to grow every single year for it to be just as meaningful. That's not sustainable in life. And if you or your students are always chasing some extrinsic piece, a piece of praise, right, saying good job. Well, if you say good job 10 times, the 11th time good job doesn't feel like much. It just feels like something that's being said. The motivation has to come from inside for it to be sustainable long term. It has to be intrinsic. To help your students develop intrinsic motivation, there are 3 key things you can do. This comes from a ton of social psychology work. For me, the best resource on this is the book Drive by Dan Pink. Really encourage you for this. This is great for you in your own lives. What you can do with your students, though, 1, let them feel like they have a sense of autonomy, that they're making these decisions on their own. And that's hard for us as parents sometimes to trust our students to do it. Sometimes it's hard for students, too, because they don't feel like they have what they need to make those decisions. That's where they have to have a sense of mastery. How can you help them get to a place where they feel that they have the skills they need to make those decisions? So when you trust them to do it, they're willing to do it. But the biggest piece in all this is having a sense of purpose. Why are they doing these things? Why are these decisions important? And what's the outcome for me that I desire? Those 3 pieces together can help develop that intrinsic motivation and help students and adults and all of us be sustained for life as we think about what motivates us. The next piece of this is thinking about the type of goals that your students are setting for themselves. What versus who? Often we all think of what goals. What do you want to be? What do you want to major in? Where do you want to go to college? And these are the questions that for the next 3 to 4 years, everyone over the age of 18 is going to be asking your students. Where are you going to go to college? What are you going to major in? And something easy like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? They are being trained to answer questions in terms of what. But what happens when you achieve those goals? Right? What happens when if your goal is to become a physician, when you get there? What's the next goal? If your goal is to be an influencer on TikTok, I don't get it, but I know it's a thing. What happens when you get there? And we see time and time again celebrities, actors, singers, professionals who have a clear goal. Become a congressman. What happens when you get there? We see people fall apart all the time because they no longer have anything they're working towards. They've achieved the what? Who goals are more sustainable? Who do you want to be? I want to be someone who supports the community around me. Who do you want to be? I want to be someone who helps my family, who is dedicated to family. Who do you want to be? I want to be a person of deep faith and commitment, right? Those are goals that are never achievable and that can sustain us for the rest of our lives. And within the who goals, right, there are lots of what's along the way. But they are not the end goal. They're just a piece of the puzzle. The other piece here is about recognizing that motivation is influenced by the environments that we're in. There's a reason that many of you chose to move to this district. There's a reason that many of you choose the organizations that you're a part of, the people you spend time with. And remembering that who you spend time with is who you become. This is also true of college choices. This is true of companies you choose to join. This is true of graduate schools. Think about the environment that your students are in. Is it an environment that inspires them? Is it an environment that lets them get by with the minimal expectations? Help them think about this. And they don't want to hear this from you about the friends they hang out with. But if you think about it in this way, not just, I really don't like her, but is she helping you become a better person? Is that work opportunity helping you become a better person? Recognizing that those decisions ultimately influence who you become. And then as we think about goals and think about motivation, it's important to encourage your students to think big. We all like little wins. We all like simple victories along the way. But the most important thing about goals is that for them to be meaningful, for it to feel really good to achieve the goal, they have to be big. Big goals are hard, and hard things are what we feel best about when we achieve them. Right? Who feels really good about making coffee in the morning? I mean, maybe if you had a long night the night before. Who feels really good about getting in the car and going to work? That's not that exciting, but that is a task every single day. Goals should be challenging. And so as your students are thinking about college, encourage them to go for something big. Encourage them to try for something that might not feel attainable. As they think about summer internships, as they think about the types of jobs and opportunities they want, as they think about their prom date, right? Go big. What's the worst thing that happens? You don't get it and you end up in the same situation you're in now, right? Life doesn't get worse when you aim for big goals. It only gets better. And often the process of getting there helps us improve along the way as well. And I know you don't want your students to be disappointed, right? I know you want them to achieve everything they want. Some of you may fall into what we now call the lawnmower parent mentality, where you knock down every single obstacle in front of your students along the way, so they just have to follow behind a perfectly clear path. And that's great. They probably like it sometimes, but they're not growing because of it. Let them fail. Let them have some big goals occasionally, because when they achieve them, they're going to feel really good about it. The last piece of this is their temperament. This is how they approach problems. I'm really encouraged in this by Robert Safian. Robert Safian was former editor of Fast Company magazine. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Before that was editor at Forbes and Fortune. Wonderful guy, thinks a lot about the future and the future of work. He says that increasingly the most important jobs are figure it out, or FIO jobs. And this is a really helpful piece for me, and I think in thinking with your students, when we're asked to do something we don't know how to do, we have choices. We can say, I don't know how to do that, he does, go ask him. Or, I'm not really sure, but she's pretty good at that, go to her. And there are times in life where we talked about coachability, right? There are times when it's important to go ask someone who does know. But there's also a deep need for people who say, I don't know how to do that, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to figure it out. And it's a lot of fun to be around people who are like that too, who say, I don't know, but let's figure it out. We can do this. And this is another piece for your students. As they're working through things, as they're going through the next couple of years of high school, as they're looking at opportunities, I don't know, but you can figure it out. Or wouldn't it be fun to figure it out? As instead of saying, oh, that's right, just go look up the YouTube video, or even worse, here's the answer, right? Because they're not learning the process of figuring it out. Ultimately, though, this temperament, is all about students' mindset. And if you're not familiar with the work of Carol Dweck, I highly, highly recommend it. She's written a book called, surprisingly, Mindset. She's a psychologist at Stanford, and she looks at, again, this idea of success. And for her, this comes down to your mindset. She separates us into groups of two different mindsets, fixed and growth. A fixed mindset is, I'm not good at math. I'm not very athletic. I'm not creative. I am an A student. I am the best player on my baseball team. All of those are fixed, right? Some are framed positively. I am an A student. I am a great athlete. Others are negative. All of them, though, stunt growth. All of them have significant implications in life. If you believe that you're not good at math, it becomes true. If you believe you're not creative, it becomes true. But if you believe that every day we have the ability to grow our skills and abilities, I will never be LeBron James. I am well aware. But I also know that if I went and practiced basketball every single day, I could become pretty good at it. Same with math. Some of us have a natural inclination to do it better than others, but everyone can improve. Same with creativity. On the other side, if you believe that you are an A student, what happens when you get to college and you get a B? You might think, no big deal, but we see it time and time again. If a student's entire concept of self is caught up in being an A student, the first B becomes more than just a grade. It becomes a challenge to self. Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Maybe I'm not as smart as my parents told me I was. They've been lying to me my whole life. And you think I'm exaggerating, but we see this. If instead, students, instead of saying, I am an A student, say, I enjoy learning, right? I enjoy the challenge of learning new things, of acquiring new skills and abilities. That is a different student. That's also a student who's going to approach classes differently. If the entire concept of self is being an A student, we also see students avoid hard classes because they don't want to mess up the grades. They avoid the challenges. They avoid opportunities to figure out new things because if they are smart, it should be easy. And if it's not easy, well, who am I? Understanding the importance of effort, understanding the importance of challenge within all of this are critical. So I'm going to give you a couple of things that you can say to your students. And you may think this is silly, but I tell you this works and the research backs it up. 1, you can do hard things. It's that easy. The other, that's really good. It would be better if, right? Not just good job. What do you learn from good job? What about it was good? Did I get lucky? Did it just happen? Here are ways to improve. And you may have had a similar professor to me. I will never forget Dr. Holyfield. He was my master's thesis advisor. The first time I had him in a class, he said to me, the first paper you get back from me will terrify you. It doesn't matter how good you are. It will be covered in red ink. Because I believe deeply that all of you have the ability to grow and get better. And my gosh, he was right. That first paper came back, and it was terrifying. But the second one got better. The third one got better. The fourth one got better because I continue to challenge myself. I learned from his feedback. Instead of avoiding it, I went into it and leaned into that opportunity. And here's the key. That means you also have to praise the effort in addition to the outcome. Right? Because outcomes that come without effort are probably not outcomes that came with much learning to them. Either it was a lucky option or the student wasn't putting themselves in a challenging situation. So just winning, if you're the only one in the competition, that's not much to it. Right? Congratulations, I'm so glad you got the trophy. But what did you get out of it? And how did you find ways you can be better? So praising effort in addition to achievement. Hear me, this is not celebrating participation ribbons. Oh my gosh, you did such a good job. I'm so proud of you. It's okay, you came in last. Right, it's about the combination of the two. The effort in addition to finding that way to grow the achievement and continuing to get stronger. And also helping students understand that urgent and important are not the same. And this is a lesson for all of us right now, right? The world is rigged to make us believe that everything is urgent. How many times has your phone buzzed just sitting here with a text, an alert, some sort of push notification from an app you have, an email, something else that's there? And that's designed so that we feel that way. And if you don't believe it, there's a great book by Nir Eyal called Hooked. This became the Bible for Silicon Valley. It is exactly how to design apps, design programs, so that people get hooked, so that we believe it's totally urgent. But if we let everything around us distract us, we'll never accomplish the things that are important. There's fun research, I think it's fun, maybe scary. If there's a phone out on the table in a meeting, even if it never rings, that meeting is 10 to 15% less effective. Because everyone in the meeting is looking at it, whether they're doing it intentionally or not, wondering, when is it gonna buzz? When is it gonna ring? When are they gonna pick it up? This is also true while you're working, if you've got your phone beside you. While you're typing an email, you're thinking about it. Same for your students. While they're working, doing their homework, if they have the phone there, if they can see it, it's distracting them. And so helping them understand the difference between what's urgent and important. When their friends reach out, everything feels urgent. Oh my gosh, I need you to come right now. This is going to be awesome. Okay, it could be fun, but is this ultimately helping you make the right decisions? And understanding that what is important is more important long-term than what's urgent. And sometimes these are hard to figure out. And by gosh, if something is urgent and important, do it immediately. But long-term, being focused on what's important. And this is going to feel redundant, but how do you know what's important? Well, you know what your goals are. You know who you're trying to become. You know where you're heading. And is this activity helping me get there or taking me somewhere else? And being able to think about that, having a clear understanding of where you're going, helps you determine what's important versus what's a distraction. And the last piece on this is, parents, this is so incredibly important, particularly as you think about all the distractions that exist in life. Please, when you're having these conversations with your students, be present. If you can't be committed to a conversation with your students, if you can't be committed to a conversation with your spouse, if you can't be committed to a conversation with your coworkers, it's probably not worth having. It is so much better to be able to say, I want you to know you're important to me, but I need 5 minutes to finish up what I'm doing, and then I can be fully yours. Because if you're not committed to having that conversation, there's really no point in having it. According to Celeste Headley, she's written a great book called We Need to Talk that talks a lot about conversations. She is a host with NPR and an opera singer, because why not? And it's a wonderful book thinking about this. The reason this is also critical, because as much as we'd like to believe it, we cannot multitask. The human brain is not capable of doing it. What actually happens is we're switching back and forth quickly between different tasks. And if you don't believe me, just think about the last time you read a book. It may have been a long time for some of you, or on a Kindle, or on your e-reader, whatever it is, and the phone rang, or someone called out, or you had a thought. It's rare that you go back to the exact word where you finished. You end up backing up 2 or 3 sentences. You go somewhere else, because you can't do both at the same time. You especially can't do 2 things at the same time that use the same parts of your brain. So having a conversation on the phone and typing an email simultaneously. Those are both using your language processing centers, and you can't do it in the same way. And you've done this before. You've been trying to type while having a conversation, and you end up typing half of what you said in the conversation instead of what you were trying to type in the moment. That's the reality here. Same when you're talking with your students. Take time for these conversations, but do them face-to-face without distraction as much as possible. It also means they ultimately go faster because you don't have to keep going back and forth. You can have a quick conversation if you're able to be focused on it. All right, you've been great. Thanks. I've got a couple of last steps for you along the way. Oh my gosh, I've got so excited. I've talked way too long. I apologize. Okay, when you're thinking about this with your students, the first thing I need you to think about is, which path am I trying to create for my students? Which path are they on? This is a road, right? I don't know actually what road this is. It looks very complicated. But this is a road that has been fully designed for students. This is an interstate. Easy access, on-ramp. Sometimes maybe there's an accident and you've got to sit and wait. But for the most part, you move fast, you move quickly, you can get on and off without much trouble. Once you figure out how to do this, it's easy to go. This is also a road. This is known as the Road of Death. This is, if you've ever seen a picture of Machu Picchu, the ancient Incan city in Peru, this is Huayna Picchu, the road, the tall point back behind Machu Picchu. This is part of the Incan highway. This still exists, and yes, it does drop off right there. One's a road, the other's a road. The road on the left has been prepared for students, right? Prepared for you completely. It is designed to be easy. The road on the right requires the person walking on it to be prepared. Right? Are you trying to prepare life for your students so it's easy on, easy off? Or are you setting a path for them that requires them to be prepared for the journey? Those are 2 different things. The one on the right is a lot harder, but the one on the right also prepares students more for life. The other thing you need to think about is, which environment are your students in? This is Tiger Woods. You may have heard of him. He's a pretty good golfer. Golf is what's known as a kind learning environment. Now, I disagree that there's anything kind about golf, but hear me out here. Golf, like chess, like playing music on your own, it's clear. Something happens, you can see, you can make an adjustment, and you can move forward, right? You swing, that goes off with the right coaching, you can figure it out and move along. This is a guy named Roger. He was a pretty good tennis player. Tennis is what's known as a wicked learning environment. Why? Because it's not a solo sport. there's someone on the other side hitting it back at you, right? And you can't control the entire environment. Most of life is a wicked environment. Most of life is not a kind learning environment. We don't fully control our outcomes. We're part of something bigger. To be best prepared for wicked learning environments requires a broad and diverse set of interests, a broad and diverse set of experiences, because being able to think and adapt at what's coming at you, there's not a clear prescription. How are you preparing your students? Are you preparing them for a kind environment where there seems to be one very clear path? Are you preparing them for a wicked environment that requires more flexibility, being more nimble? Tiger played golf from as soon as he could walk, and that's all he's ever done. And maybe his body is suffering because of it. Maybe his mind had some of that to do too. Roger has had incredible success and sustainability in tennis. He didn't specialize in tennis until he was 13 or 14. He played dozens of other sports, everything he could along the way. And he contributes his success in tennis to the variety of things that he played, by being able to play soccer and cricket and volleyball and other sports that helped him think about environments differently, to help him predict what his opponents were doing. He also wants you to think about this in the way in which you balance support and expectation for your students. If you think about support from bottom to top, expectations from left to right, if you offer low expectations and high support, you're being permissive to your students. They may like this, but they're not learning. If you offer neither, you're neglecting them, and that's not a healthy place to live. And I don't believe you're doing that, because you wouldn't be here tonight if you were neglectful parents. So I'm giving all of you a pass on that quadrant. If you offer them incredibly high expectations but no support, right, this is authoritarian. And some of us think this is what leadership looks like. This is where success happens, but it doesn't. All you learn to do is be a rule follower. All you learn to do is whatever it takes to avoid the conflict along the way. And by playing defense all the time, by avoiding conflict, your students are not being prepared for what comes next. This is where it's important to balance the support and the expectations. Yes, have incredibly high expectations for your students. We talked about this, right? Set big goals, goals that are hard to achieve, and support them along the way. Support doesn't mean do it for them. Support means offer that mentorship environment. Pick them back up, help them get dusted off when they have a hard day. Support means putting them in the right schools and environments. Support means giving them the right opportunities and continuing to challenge them in those expectations. It's also important to remember that you're not going to get a daily report card on how much your student is developing these life skills. You will not know tomorrow if your student has a greater sense of motivation than they do today. This is a long-term process, and this is the hardest part about all of this, because you just got to kind of trust that it's working. You also have to be incredibly repetitive, and some of you are thinking that I've just said the same thing over and over and over again tonight. Well, yes, I have in many ways. And do you know why? Because on average, it takes 7 times hearing something before you remember it. 7. Now, you can't just say, make your bed, 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 make your bed. Like, that's annoying, right? And so it's also about the way in which you say it. You also need to remember that even if you say to someone, and this one blows my mind, this is really important. I need you to pay attention. You've had this conversation with your students. Only 50% of the time will they remember it a day later. It's not you. It's not your child. They're not broken. This is human nature. There are some studies that say we now have less of an attention span than goldfish. I don't know how that's measured, but it's out there. It's real. And so only 50% of the time, even if it's important, you've got to have a little grace, and you've got to be willing to say it time and time again. And you've got to do it in a way that is spaced, right? This is why cramming for exams may work for the next morning, but it doesn't lead to long-term learning. So say something today. Say it next week. Say it next week. You're fortunate in that your parents have sophomores and freshmen and sophomores, and so you have lots of time here to prepare them for this. To say you can do hard things. They don't believe it the first time. You have to say it over and over again. Help them understand that the effort is as important to you and to them as the outcome. Say to them, I'm really proud of you for getting that grade, but did you work hard for it? Well, let's try and put yourself in a more challenging environment so we can really grow from it. Space it out and say it over and over and over again. Also want you to think about helping them build new habits. 40% of what we do in our lives is habitualized. If you don't believe me, think about the first 30 minutes of your day. I bet for most of you, the first 30 minutes of your day is almost exactly the same every single day. There is something to, right, getting out of bed on the wrong side because it throws off that morning routine. But you get up, you do your thing, you wash your face, you make the coffee, you have your breakfast, you sit at the same seat, eat the same thing every morning, you get in the car, you drive the same route. If ever there's something that's a change, you end up going the wrong way anyway because you're used to doing it all the time, then you say, where am I going? That's it, right? That's a habit. You can use that for good, you can also use it for bad. If your habit involves scrolling Instagram or Facebook, because we're old and we still use Facebook, for the first 30 minutes of your day, is that a habit that's helping you? You can create new habits for your students by helping them think about, by creating a context to learn the habit, right? All of our habits are defined by a space, whether it's the driver's seat in our car, our bed, a table, a space, our desk at work, the computer, wherever we log in. Find a context that doesn't have a habit and help it be repeated time and time again. Help your students, where's their homework spot? Make this your spot. Let this be it. And it might not be a spot that you really like. It might not be a spot that you think is the best spot. But if it's a place that they're comfortable with, that's okay, as long as they go back the next day. As long as they go back the next day. And that becomes their place. And when they go to that place, their mind is moving towards, this is where I do homework. This is where I read. This is where I prepare. And then I've told you extrinsic motivation is bad, but in building habits, it can be incredibly helpful. Because it doesn't matter if it wears out, by the time it wears out, you've built the habit and you don't need it anymore. So giving them rewards, even if that's a good job, thanks so much. Hey, if you get through this week doing your homework in this place in the same way, each time we'll go out and we'll get a treat, whatever it is for your family, whatever that thing is. This is a great way to use that to get it done. Because by the time they're tired of the reward, the habit is instilled and you don't have to worry about it anymore. The last couple things, I want you to hear this and also want you to share this with your students. A great book called Chatter that talks about, right, the voices we all hear in our heads. Every day we are able to tell ourselves, you can do this or you cannot. And whatever you listen to is true. And if you can ignore the things that are saying this isn't possible, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not able to do it, and can focus on the ones that are saying you can, so much more is possible. The other piece about this that your students don't like to hear, and none of us really do, is that we have to embrace the stress. We have to recognize that the same feelings that are telling us we can't do this, I can't perform on this stage, I can't take this test, I don't feel good about it, are the same things that give us energy. If you've ever been an actor or a dancer or a musician, and before a performance, right, your palms get a little bit sweaty, you feel those butterflies in your stomach, that's a stress reaction. And you can use that to give you the energy to move forward. You can also use that to say, I can't. But the reason our bodies feel that way is because it's giving us energy we need for a difficult moment. It's giving us the ability to go into that big game, to go onto the stage, to take the test, to do the work. And that day, I've got a really big day at work, I've got a lot going on, you're feeling it on the way in. Let that give you the energy you need to get through the big presentation, the big assignment. The number one predictor of how our bodies respond to stress is the way in which we believe we will respond to stress. If we believe it supports and encourages us, it can. If we believe it can't, it doesn't. And Kelly McGonigal's written a great book on this. Has a TED Talk. If the book's too long to read, same kind of thing. Encourage you to take a look at that. In closing, if none of this made any sense to you, if you don't want to believe any of it, just take a picture of this slide and share it with your students. Because these are 10 things that they can do every single day that require zero talent whatsoever. They can be on time, and that's becoming more and more rare. They can show a strong work ethic. They can put effort into what they're doing. They can have good body language. It's different. You can bring energy. And energy does not have to be charisma. You don't have to dance around. You don't have to have stage. But you feel it. You know when someone has good energy and they walk into a room. You know when you bring good energy into a room. This can be done just by deciding to do it. Have good attitude. Have passion for what you do. And passion here, again, is not being passionate. It is clarity towards a long-term goal. Be coachable. We've talked about that. Be prepared. I know I skipped one because I want to come back to number 9. Do extra. I realize this is dangerous in this community, right? This is a community of overachievers, and I love it, and that's great. This is a community that you've been telling your students already to do extra. This doesn't mean they have to do a big thing more, but I'm really encouraged by this, by the entrepreneur in residence at High Point University, Mark Randolph. Mark's the co-founder of Netflix. He's a guy that's had some pretty good success in his life. He's on our campus once a semester working with all of our students. He still has a Post-it note on his mirror every morning when he wakes up that says, "What's one more thing you can do today?" And here's what I want to encourage students to think about, and encourage you to help your students think about. What is that one more thing that it works towards the who goal? If the who is to be a person that is seen as kind and charitable, what's one text you can send to a friend to say, "Hey, thinking of you, hope you had a great day"? What did that take? 5 seconds? What's one quick note to someone saying, "Thank you so much for the opportunity you gave me last week. Thank you for caring." Say thank you to your parent. You can't ask them to say that. That's a bit much. But right, what are those things? If the goal is to be someone who is a person of faith, what's that one more thing that you can do real quickly to do it? These don't have to be day-long projects. These don't have to be year-long endeavors. This doesn't have to be founding Netflix. This has to be just one more thing, one more email before you leave work, one more phone call before you go. And if you do that one more thing every day, it adds up quickly over time. And so what is that one more thing that you can do today? So as we come back to the end, right, hopefully you've gotten a sense of the importance of these. Hopefully you have a sense of ways in which you can help your students develop these. And I promise you, if this becomes the focus, how can you be more coachable? Right? How can you embrace the feedback that's coming at you? How can you have a sense of motivation that comes from inside that sustains you for life? How can you better relate to other people? How can you understand what other people are feeling and what they're needing? Right now, I recognize that you're all ready to go. And so that's my emotional intelligence moment. And how can you have a temperament that helps you embrace growth? These are things that we work with our students every single day at High Point University. We don't leave this to chance. We actually teach a life skills seminar in students' first semester that talks with them about coachability. It talks with them about their mindset, talks to them about how to be a great communicator one-on-one and in groups. It talks with them about how to manage their time, their finances, and their energy. Right? Energy management is one of the most important things students can learn for their lives. It helps them focus on these skills, and then we reinforce it throughout their entire curriculum, their entire time at High Point University. Because we know that it doesn't matter actually what their degree is in. What matters is the impact they can have in the graduate programs they go to, the impact they can have in the companies they work with. And that's going to happen through other things. Because all of them in their pockets, heck, in their hands at all times have a phone that gives them access to all the information in the world. If they don't know an answer, they can look it up. But only if they believe that they can figure it out. Only if they believe that they can grow in their skills and abilities. Only if they believe that there are people around them that want to support them, want to grow together as an incredible community. If you're interested in learning more about High Point, of course, I'm happy to talk about that. That's what I do for a living. But most importantly, I hope you've taken something out of this, even if it's just one thing that you'll take home and talk about with your students. And if you don't talk about it with them, that you'll just do with them as they prepare to succeed here in high school, as they prepare to succeed in college, and as they prepare for life. Thank you so much. You've been incredibly generous with your time. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I hope I'm not messing up my own children with all of this, positivity and growth talk. But I think it's working so far, and we've seen it work time and time again with students at High Point University. And one last plug, how do I know it's working? Because last year, 99% of our students were employed or in graduate school within 6 months, when the national average, as you saw, is just over 50%. So thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm happy to take questions. I know some folks have to go, but anything you want to ask in front of the group, and I can also stay behind. Yes? Did you have a question? Oh, no. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.